Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. Marcus, there's something wrong. I have breasts. The words came out in a choked whisper, my voice raspy from a throat that felt like it had been scraped with sandpaper. I was clutching my phone so hard my knuckles were white, staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize. It was one of those textured popcorn ceilings popular in the 90s, and it was spinning slowly, menacingly. A sledgehammer was pounding against the inside of my skull, a rhythmic, punishing beat that kept time with the faint thumping of bass from a club somewhere far below. Las Vegas. The thought surfaced through the fog. I was in Vegas for my wedding to Rebecca. My bachelor party was last night. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to piece it together. Shots. There were definitely shots. A magic show. A blur of neon lights and the deafening crash of a jackpot machine. Marcus laughing, slapping me on the back, then nothing. A complete, terrifying blank. I tried to sit up, and that's when the second wave of wrongness hit me. Something was constricting my chest, tight and unforgiving. My body felt off. The air from the hotel vent slid across my bare legs, a sensation that felt utterly alien. I never slept without pajama pants. My hand went to my chest, expecting to feel the familiar plane of my own pecs, maybe some hangover sweat. Instead, my fingers met a soft, yielding mound of flesh, encased in something silky. I froze. My heart, which was already doing a frantic tap dance against my ribs, went into a full-on drum solo. I fumbled for the lamp on the nightstand, my fingers clumsy and strange. The light flickered on, bathing the room in a sickly yellow glow, and there, in the giant, gold-framed mirror across from the bed, was the source of my terror. A woman was staring back at me. She was sitting up in the king-sized bed, tangled in the white duvet. Her brown hair, long and wavy, was a mess, falling over her shoulders. Her face was pale under what looked like the remnants of last night's makeup-smudged eyeliner, a faint trace of glitter on her cheekbones. Her lips, plump and painted a vibrant, smeared red, were parted in a silent scream. A slinky, crimson cocktail dress was hiked up her thighs, its thin straps digging into her soft shoulders. And her eyes were mine, wide with a primal fear I could feel clawing its way up my own throat. "No," I whispered, the sound foreign in my own ears. It was higher-pitched, softer. I scrambled out of the bed, a tangle of limbs and unfamiliar sensations. My feet hit the carpet, but I stumbled, nearly crashing into the dresser. I looked down. I was wearing a pair of Impossible, black stiletto heels, the kind Rebecca wore on date nights, the kind I'd always found impossibly elegant and faintly dangerous. Now they were strapped to my feet, forcing my weight onto the balls of my feet in a way that felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Each step was a precarious, wobbling disaster. The click-clack of the heels on the small patch of tile by the mini-fridge was a sound I'd heard 1,000,000 times, but never from my own body. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. This was a prank. It had to be. Marcus, he must have gotten me blackout drunk, dressed me up, maybe even hired a makeup artist. It was the only explanation that didn't shatter the laws of physics. I lurched into the bathroom, flicking on the bright vanity lights. The reflection was even clearer here, more horrifyingly intimate. I leaned in close, my breath fogging the glass. The woman's face, my face was flawlessly smooth. The jawline was softer than I remembered, my brows perfectly arched. I tugged at an eyelash at the corner of my eye, expecting the satisfying pull of a fake strip. Nothing. It was rooted in my eyelid, my own eyelash, just longer, thicker. My hands flew to my face, scrubbing. I turned on the tap, splashing cold water, trying to wash away the foundation, the blush, the illusion, but the skin remained the same creamy tone. The makeup wasn't caked on, it was just on my face. My terrified gaze dropped lower. The red dress clung to a figure that was decidedly not mine. I had a runner's build, lean, wiry. This body was all curves. My hands, shaking uncontrollably, traced the line of a delicate collarbone, down to the swell of the breasts. They felt real. Soft, heavy, and undeniably a part of me. I unzipped the side of the dress with trembling fingers. The silk fabric fell away, pulling at my waist. I was wearing a lacy black bra. Underneath it, the breasts were still there, pale skin, a faint speckle of freckles I recognized from my own chest, but shaped into something utterly new. I could feel my own heartbeat, a frantic drumming, right beneath the soft flesh. A sob escaped my lips, a sound that was half gasp, half whimper. I ripped off the bra, tearing at the clasp until it came undone. I had to get this stuff off me. The silicone inserts, the padding, whatever cheap magician's trick this was. But there was nothing. It was just skin. My skin. "This isn't real," I chanted, my voice cracking. "This isn't real. This isn't real." I stumbled back into the main room, my bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. My own clothes were nowhere to be seen. Just a sequined clutch purse on the nightstand and the red dress crumpled on the floor. I saw my wallet on the dresser and lunged for it. My one link to my old reality. I flipped it open. My driver's license, Alexander Miller, 6'1", male. The face in the photo was a stranger to me now. A ghost. That's when my phone rang. Its cheerful, upbeat ringtone a violent assault on my shattered nerves. The screen lit up with a picture of Rebecca, smiling, her arm around my neck. The picture was taken just last week. I looked so happy, so male. "Wedding in 3 hours," the text below her name screamed. 3 hours. I was supposed to be standing at an altar in 3 hours, waiting for the love of my life. How could I do that? How could I explain? This I sank to my knees, the unfamiliar weight of my body collapsing under the force of a despair so absolute it felt like it was going to swallow me whole. My long hair fell around my face like a curtain, and I let out a sound of pure, unadulterated panic. My nightmare was just beginning. I must have called Marcus a dozen times, each call going straight to his voicemail. My frantic, whisper pleas probably sounding like the ravings of a lunatic. Finally, on the 13th try, he picked up. "Dude, chill out." His voice was a gravelly mess. "My head feels like a bowling ball. What's the emergency?" "Marcus," I croaked, my new voice still a shock. "You have to get to my room, now." "Alex, you sound weird. You sick?" "Just get here," I snapped. Then immediately felt a pang of guilt. He was my best man, my best friend since kindergarten. It wasn't his fault. All right, I'm on my way. Don't get your tux in a twist." He hung up. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. I paced the room, the click-clacking of the heels a constant, mocking reminder of my predicament. I had managed to put the dress back on, zipping it up with a dexterity that surprised and horrified me. It felt marginally better than being naked, but only just. Being exposed in this new body felt like a violation. A sharp knock on the door made me jump a foot in the air. "Alex, it's me. Open up." My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. I took a deep, shaky breath, which did little to calm the frantic hummingbird in my chest. I pulled the door open just a crack. Marcus was leaning against the doorframe, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and shorts, his hair sticking up in every direction. He squinted at me through the crack. "Hey, sorry, wrong room," he started to say, turning away. "Marcus, wait, it's me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He stopped, turning back slowly. His eyes, bleary from his own hangover, widened as he took in the sliver of me. He could see the red dress, the wavy hair, the painted lips. A slow grin spread across his face. "No way," he chuckled, shaking his head. "You finally did it. You lost a bet so bad you ended up in a dress. Who's the lucky lady, huh? Did you at least get her number?" He pushed the door open, stepping inside, and his laughter died in his throat as he got a full view of me. He saw the sheer, unadulterated terror in my eyes. "Whoa," he said, his smile faltering. "Okay, this is a very committed prank. You look, wow, they did a real number on you. The hair, the makeup, is that a wig?" He reached out to touch my hair, and I flinched back as if he'd tried to brand me. "It's not a wig, Marcus," I said, my voice shaking. "None of it is." He stared at me, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about? Of course it's a wig. And that makeup is caked on. Here, let me help you." He strode into the bathroom and came back with a washcloth. running it under the tap. He approached me like I was a frightened animal. Okay, hold still. Let's get this war paint off, and then we can figure out how to get you out of this situation. He gently dabbed the wet cloth at my cheek, rubbing. He expected foundation to come off, to reveal my usual tanned skin underneath. When nothing happened, he rubbed harder. Dude, what kind of waterproof cement did they use on you? He muttered, peering at the clean cloth and then back at my face. He tried my lips next, scrubbing at the red lipstick. It smeared a little, but it didn't come off. It was as if the color was part of my skin. His movement slowed. The playful glint in his eyes was replaced by a creeping unease. Alex, what the hell is going on? Tears I hadn't even realized were welling up finally spilled over, tracing clean paths through the faint shimmer of leftover makeup on my cheeks. I don't know. I sobbed. I woke up like this. I swear, it's not a costume. He looked from my tear-streaked face down to my chest, to the very real curves outlined by the red dress. He was a practical guy, an engineer. His mind worked on logic, on cause and effect. And this defied all logic. Okay, he said, his voice now low and serious. Let's verify. The chest, that's gotta be fake. Some kind of Hollywood-grade prosthetic. He reached out, his hand hesitating in the air for a moment. I just nodded, too broken to feel embarrassed. His fingers made contact with the fabric of my dress, pressing gently against one of the mounds. His face went pale. He wasn't pressing against silicone. He could feel the warmth of my skin, the soft give of real tissue. Oh my God, he whispered, snatching his hand back like he'd been burned. He stumbled back a few steps, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. He looked at me, truly looked at me, not as Alex in a dress, but as this new person standing before him. He saw the soft line of my shoulders, the gentle curve of my hips, the slender shape of my ankles disappearing into those killer heels. You're not just dressed up, he said, the words heavy with disbelief. You've actually changed. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. The confirmation from him, the acknowledgement that I wasn't crazy, didn't bring relief. It brought a fresh wave of despair. It was real. Marcus was silent for a long time. Just the sound of our breathing filling the room. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me finally. He spoke, his voice quiet and steady. Okay, we have a problem. A big, weird, impossible problem. But we'll figure it out. First things first. You can't stay in that dress. It's too much. And those shoes are a safety hazard. He knelt in front of me, his hands surprisingly gentle as he unbuckled the straps of the stilettos. The relief of having them off was immense. I wiggled my toes, feeling the blood rush back into them. He then helped me out of the dress. I stood before him in the lacy underwear, feeling a burning shame creep up my neck. I tried to cover myself, but he just shook his head. Don't, he said softly. It's okay. It's still you. He grabbed one of his own t-shirts and a pair of gym shorts from the duffel bag he'd brought with him. They were laughably big on my new frame, but they were soft and familiar. As I pulled on the shirt, the cotton brushed against my chest, and a strange tingling sensation shot through me. It wasn't unpleasant. It was just new. Dressed in his oversized clothes, I felt a little less like a panicked woman in a nightclub and a little more like something else. I didn't know what. I caught my reflection in the dark screen of the TV. The baggy clothes couldn't hide the cascade of brown hair or the delicate features of my face. In a strange, jarring way, the casual outfit made the transformation look even more real, more permanent. This wasn't a costume anymore. This was a girl in her boyfriend's t-shirt. I watched myself in the reflection, a weird sense of detachment washing over me. I turned my head from side to side. The hair moved with a life of its own, soft and flowing. I raised a hand to my face, tracing the line of my jaw. It was a pretty face. The thought popped into my head, unbidden and shocking. The woman in the reflection was undeniably attractive. Marcus saw me staring. He came and stood beside me, looking at our reflections together, his big solid frame next to my smaller, curvier one. You know, he said, his voice hesitant. If I didn't know you, I'd say you look really beautiful. The compliment landed with a strange mix of horror and something else. A tiny fluttery feeling in my stomach. I hated it. I hated all of this, but for a split second, I didn't hate the reflection. We have to call Rebecca, I said, my voice thick. We have to cancel the wedding. We will, he said, but first we need to figure out what to call you. Walking into this and saying, "Hi, I'm Alexander," is just going to confuse everyone more. For now, just for today. Until we figure this out, maybe we need a different name. He looked at my reflection thoughtfully. You kind of look like a Macy. Macy. The name hung in the air between us. It sounded soft, feminine. It sounded like the woman in the mirror, and for some reason, hearing it didn't feel as wrong as it should have. Macy, I repeated. The name is strange, foreign sound on my own lips. Okay, for now. The plan was simple, or as simple as a plan could be in our utterly insane situation. We couldn't hide in the hotel room forever. We needed clothes, real clothes that fit my new body. Something I could wear to face Rebecca and our families and deliver the news that the wedding was off because the groom had, for lack of a better term, ceased to exist. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, decided a shopping trip was the first logical step. We need something neutral, he declared, pacing the room like a general planning a campaign. Jeans, a sweater, something that says, I am undergoing a crisis of biblical proportions, but I am also comfortable. The idea of walking through a casino and into a mall, dressed as, well, as me, sent a fresh jolt of panic through my system. I can't go out there. Marcus, everyone will stare. They're not going to stare at you any more than they stare at every other woman in Vegas, he said, handing me a pair of his sunglasses. Put these on, we'll be in and out, I promise. The journey through the hotel lobby was a blur of heightened senses, the cacophony of slot machines, the smell of stale cigarette smoke and cheap perfume, the feel of the borrowed flip-flops on my feet. Every glance from a stranger felt like an accusation. I kept my head down, my long hair falling around my face, creating a curtain between me and the world. Marcus walked close, a protective, grounding presence at my side. We found a department store in the Miracle Mile shops, a cavernous space filled with bright lights and endless racks of clothing. It felt like stepping onto an alien planet. Marcus, surprisingly, seemed to know exactly what he was doing. He steered me towards the women's section, a vibrant world of colors and fabrics I'd only ever viewed from a distance. Okay, Macy, he said, using the name with a deliberate casualness that was both jarring and strangely comforting. Let's find you some armor. He started pulling things off racks. A pair of dark-wash skinny jeans, a simple cream-colored cashmere sweater, a soft gray t-shirt. I stood numbly as he handed me the items. In the dressing room, the reality of the situation crashed down on me again. I was about to try on women's clothes, voluntarily. The first item was the jeans. Pulling them on was a strange experience. I'd spent my life in straight-leg or athletic fit pants. These were designed for curves I now possessed. The denim hugged my hips and thighs in a way that was completely new. When I looked in the three-way mirror, I was shocked. They fit perfectly. They made my legs look long and slender. Next was the soft t-shirt, the fabric draped over my chest, outlining the shape of my breasts in a way that was subtle but undeniable. I turned, watching the way the material moved with me. My body was different, and these clothes were made for it. It was a simple, devastating fact. Then Marcus knocked on the door. How's it going in there? It's weird, I managed to say. Let me see. I hesitated, then opened the door. He was leaning against the wall, scrolling on his phone. He looked up, and his eyes widened slightly. He took in the sight of me in the jeans and t-shirt. Wow, he said, a note of genuine surprise in his voice. They really suit you. A blush crept up my neck. I felt a bizarre mix of shame and a tiny flicker of something else. Pride, it feels strange. You know what I saw a dress on the way in? Just try it. For the hell of it, he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. No, Marcus, that's not the point. We need something neutral, remember? Humor me, he said, and disappeared for a moment. returning with a simple navy blue sundress on a hanger. It was modest, with a high neckline and a skirt that fell just to the knees. 5 minutes. What's the harm? With a sigh, I took the dress and closed the door. The fabric was light and airy. As I slipped it over my head, it settled onto my shoulders and waist with a soft whisper. The skirt swirled around my legs as I moved. It felt freeing, completely different from the restrictive jeans. I looked in the mirror, and the person looking back at me took my breath away. It wasn't a man in a dress. It wasn't a panicked victim of a cruel prank. It was a woman, a sad, confused woman, but a woman nonetheless. The dress accentuated the gentle slope of my shoulders and the curve of my waist. It made my hair look richer, my eyes deeper. A thought, quiet and insidious, slipped into my mind. This feels right. It wasn't a logical thought. It was a deep, instinctual feeling. The way the fabric moved when I walked, the way my hair brushed against the back of my neck, the slight floral scent of the store's air freshener clinging to my skin. It all felt correct, in a way that my old familiar clothes wouldn't anymore. I opened the door again. Marcus was waiting. He saw the dress, and his teasing expression softened into something more thoughtful, more serious. He didn't say I looked beautiful this time. He just watched me for a long moment. "I don't understand," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I should hate this. I should be ripping this dress off and screaming. But I'm not. I feel calm." Marcus stepped closer, his voice low. "Alex, Macy, maybe this isn't just about your body. Maybe this isn't some crazy curse or a prank that went too far. Maybe this is something that was already inside you, something you kept hidden away so deep you didn't even know it was there." His words hit me harder than any of the physical shocks of the morning. The idea was terrifying, that this wasn't an external change forced upon me, but an internal truth finally breaking free. Was it possible? Had I been living a lie my entire life without even knowing it? The thought of Rebecca's face, her sweet smile, flashed in my mind. The woman I was going to marry, the woman who loved Alexander Miller. Who was I now? Could she ever love this person, this Macy? I stood there in the department store dressing room, surrounded by mirrors, reflecting a dozen versions of a stranger I was starting to recognize. My hands were shaking, but my gaze in the mirror was steady. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but now it was mixed with a terrifying, exhilarating curiosity. "Okay," I whispered, more to myself than to Marcus. My fingers traced the delicate neckline of the dress. I think I need to see Rebecca." We bought the dress, and as I walked out of the store, the lightweight skirt brushing against my calves with every step, I didn't feel like I was wearing a disguise. For the first time all day, I felt like I was wearing my own skin. The walk back to the hotel was a silent, somber affair. The navy dress felt like a second skin, and the flip-flops Marcus had bought me made a soft, rhythmic slapping sound against the polished floors of the casino. Each step brought me closer to the moment I was dreading more than anything in the world, telling Rebecca. How do you even begin that conversation? "Hi, honey, bad news. Your fiancé is gone. But don't worry, he's been replaced by a confused woman in a sundress. The wedding is probably off." We got back to my room, the scene of my morning's breakdown. Marcus ordered room service, but I couldn't even think about food. I just sat on the edge of the bed, my phone in my hand, Rebecca's contact photo staring up at me. "You have to call her," Marcus said gently, sitting in the armchair opposite me. "The longer you wait, the harder it will be." "What if she screams?" I whispered. "What if she hangs up? What if she thinks I'm some kind of monster?" "She loves you, Alex," he said, pointedly using my old name. "The person inside, that hasn't changed, has it?" I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. Did changing this much on the outside change who you were on the inside? I felt like a stranger to myself. With a trembling finger, I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Alex, hey, you," her voice was like sunshine, warm and full of life. It made my throat tighten with an almost unbearable ache. "Are you alive? The boys aren't supposed to let you out of their sight until you're at the altar. I'm just finishing up with my hair. Are you excited?" I'm so excited I could explode. Tears pricked my eyes. Her happiness, her normal, beautiful, wedding day excitement felt like a physical blow. "Rebecca," I started, and my voice came out as a strained, high-pitched squeak. I cleared my throat, trying again. "Rebecca, we need to talk." The cheerful energy in her voice vanished instantly. "Alex, what's wrong? You sound strange. Are you okay?" I don't know what I am," I choked out, the words tumbling over each other. "Something happened. Last night, I'm not the man you know anymore." There was a long, terrifying silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her faint, sharp intake of breath. "What do you mean, did you get hurt? Are you in trouble?" "No, not like that. It's physical, Rebecca. I can't explain it over the phone. Can you meet me in the lobby? By the main fountain?" Another pause, this one even longer. I held my breath, bracing for the click of her hanging up, for the anger, the confusion. "Okay," she finally said, her voice small and tight with worry. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Alex, whatever it is, we'll face it together. Okay?" "Okay," I whispered, and the line went dead. I looked at Marcus, my eyes wide with panic. "She's coming." "I'll be right here," he said, his expression solid and reassuring. "You can do this." The elevator ride down to the lobby was an eternity. I stood in the corner, trying to make myself as small as possible. When the doors opened, I stepped out into the opulent, overwhelming chaos of the main lobby. I found a spot near the enormous bubbling fountain, my back to most of the foot traffic, and I waited. I saw her before she saw me. She came rushing from the direction of the guest elevators, already in her pristine white robe, her hair beautifully styled in an elegant updo. She was scanning the crowd, her face a mask of anxiety, looking for Alex, for her 6'1", short-haired, familiar fiancé. She wasn't looking for a woman in a navy sundress. Her eyes swept past me once, twice. My heart broke a little more each time. She couldn't see me. I was invisible to her. Taking a breath that felt like breathing glass, I took a small step forward. "Rebecca." My voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. She stopped, turning towards the sound. Her eyes found mine, and then, for a heart-stopping moment, there was nothing, no recognition, just a polite, confused frown for the stranger who had called her name. Then I saw it, the flicker, the slow dawning horror and utter disbelief that washed over her features as her brain connected the impossible dots. She saw my eyes. She saw the shape of my mouth, the way I stood. She saw Alex inside this completely different person. Her hand flew to her mouth, and her beautiful face went deathly pale. She didn't scream, she didn't run. She just stood there, frozen, her eyes locked on mine, filled with a million unasked questions. I closed the distance between us, my legs feeling like lead. I stopped a few feet in front of her, my hands clenched at my sides. "It's me," I said, my voice cracking with emotion. "I swear, it's me. I don't know how. I woke up, and I was like this. I am so sorry." Tears were streaming down my face now, and down hers too. She just stared, her eyes tracing every new line of my face, my body. I braced myself for the rejection, the revulsion. Instead, she took a shaky step forward, then another. She slowly raised a hand, her fingers trembling, and gently touched my cheek. Her touch was feather-light, tentative, as if she was afraid I might shatter. "Alex," she whispered, her voice full of a raw, aching vulnerability. I just nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. She let out a shuddering sob, and then she did something I never would have expected. She closed the remaining space between us and wrapped her arms around me, pulling me into a hug. I stiffened for a second, shocked, before melting against her, burying my face in the crook of her neck, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. I held onto her like a drowning man clinging to a lifeline. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, two souls adrift in a sea of confusion, holding each other in the middle of a bustling Las Vegas hotel lobby. Finally, she pulled back, her hands on my shoulders, her eyes searching mine. They weren't filled with disgust or anger. They were filled with a deep, profound sadness, and something else, a fierce, protective love. She wiped a tear from my cheek with her thumb, She looked at my face, my hair, the dress. A strange, watery smile touched her lips. "You're beautiful," she whispered. The words, so simple, so unexpected, broke me. I sobbed anew, a raw, ragged sound of grief and gratitude. She took my hand, her grip firm and steady. "Okay," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of its usual strength. "Okay, we'll figure this out, but first, we have a wedding to get to." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "Rebecca, what are you talking about? We can't. Look at me." "I am looking at you," she said, her gaze unwavering. "You're the person I love. You were always going to be standing there today. So what if you're in a different package?" She squeezed my hand. "If you truly feel like this is you now, then let's let her get married today. Let's let Macy get married." Rebecca's suggestion hung in the air, audacious and terrifying and beautiful all at once. My mind reeled. Get married like this as Macy. "You can't be serious," I stammered, looking from her determined face to my own reflection in a nearby polished pillar. "Our families, the guests, my parents think their son is getting married today?" "Then we'll tell them," she said, her voice infused with a strength that I desperately needed to borrow. "We'll tell them the truth, the impossible, insane truth, or we'll tell them a version of it. I don't care. What I care about is you. And I promise to marry you today. Not a specific set of pronouns or a particular suit." The next hour was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. We went up to Rebecca's suite, a much grander affair than my own room. Her bridesmaids were there. A flurry of silk robes and champagne glasses. They fell silent the moment we walked in, their joyful chatter dying as they stared at me, the strange woman holding their best friend's hand. Rebecca handled it with a grace that was nothing short of heroic. "Everyone," she announced, her voice clear and firm, "this is Alex." A wave of confused murmurs went through the room. Rebecca held up a hand. "Things are complicated, and we don't have time for 1,000 questions right now. All you need to know is that this is the person I love, and this is the person I am marrying in 1 hour. We're going to need another dress." To their immense credit, after the initial shock wore off, her friends rallied. There was no judgment, only a frantic, mission-oriented energy. One bridesmaid, a fashion designer, immediately took my measurements. Another called the hotel's concierge, who called a bridal boutique that owed him a favor. Within 30 minutes, a rack of white dresses was wheeled into the suite. Standing in front of a mirror, trying on wedding gowns, was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. The fabrics were heavy and luxurious satin, lace, tulle. With each dress I tried, the woman in the mirror became less of a stranger. In a simple, elegant A-line gown made of ivory silk, something clicked. It had delicate lace straps and a modest neckline. It felt right. Rebecca came and stood behind me, her reflection appearing next to mine in the mirror. She was already in her own breathtaking gown, a cascade of lace and beading, 2 brides, side by side. "That's the one," she whispered, her eyes meeting mine in the reflection. She rested her chin on my shoulder, and for the first time that day, I saw a genuine, radiant smile on her face. The hardest part was the phone calls. I called my parents first. With Rebecca holding my hand, my mother answered, bubbly and excited. "Mom," I began, my voice shaking. "Something has happened. I'm okay, but I'm different." Explaining it was like trying to describe a color no one has ever seen. I stumbled through the words, focusing on the core truth. I was still me. I still loved Rebecca, and I still wanted to get married. There was stunned silence, followed by a flood of panicked, confused questions. Rebecca took the phone. "Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice calm and soothing. "I know this is a shock, but I love your child no matter what. We're getting married today. We just need you to trust us. Please." By the time the ceremony was set to begin, a wave of nervous energy had taken over the entire venue. Whispers rippled through the guests. The groom was missing. The bride was sequestered. Something was wrong. Our parents met us in a private room just off the main hall. My dad, a stoic man of few words, just stared at me, his face pale. My mom was crying silently, clutching his arm. Rebecca's parents looked equally bewildered. I stood before them in my ivory dress, my hands trembling. "I know you don't understand," I said, my voice barely audible. "I don't understand either. But this is me now, and the only thing I'm sure of in this whole crazy world is that I love your daughter. I looked at my own parents, and I'm still your kid. I hope you can still see that." My dad stepped forward. He looked at me for a long, hard moment, then he simply nodded and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Let's get you married, son," he hesitated. "Daughter, let's get you married." My mother let out a sob and hugged me, her embrace fierce and unconditional. In that moment, I knew we would be okay. The music started. The plan had been for Rebecca's father to walk her down the aisle while I waited at the altar. Now, we decided we would walk together. The heavy wooden doors to the ceremony hall swung open. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled guests. They saw Rebecca, stunning as expected, and then they saw me, the second bride, Marcus, standing at the altar where I was supposed to be, gave me a small, encouraging smile. We walked down the aisle hand in hand, our steps in sync. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes on me, a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning wonder. But I didn't look at them, I only looked at Rebecca. Her hand in mine was my anchor, her smile my entire world. We reached the altar and turned to face each other. The officiant, a close family friend who had been given a 10-minute crash course on the situation, looked a little shell-shocked, but proceeded with grace. When it came time for the vows, Rebecca went first. "Alex," she began, then paused, a small smile on her lips. "Macy, when I was a little girl, I dreamed of marrying a handsome prince. But as I grew up, I realized I didn't want a prince. I just wanted a person who was kind and funny and who made me feel safe. I found that person in you today. You may look different to the world, but to me, you have never been more yourself. I see your soul, and it's the same one I fell in love with. I vow to love all of you, every part of you, for the rest of our lives. I will love Alexander, and I will love Macy, because I love the person you are, were, and will become." Tears were streaming down my face. I took a shaky breath and began my own vows. "Rebecca, I came to this city to marry you as one person, and I stand before you now as someone else entirely. This morning, I woke up lost. I was terrified. I felt like my life was over. But you looked at me, and you still saw me. You didn't run away. You took my hand and walked with me. You are my home. I don't know what this journey ahead will look like, but I vow to walk it with honesty and with courage. And I vow to live as my true self, whatever that may be, so that our love never has to hide in the shadows. I love you, more than I have words for." The officiant pronounced us wives, and when Rebecca kissed me, the sound of applause that erupted from the crowd was thunderous. It wasn't polite clapping. It was a roar of acceptance, of love, of celebration for something unexpected and beautiful. As rose petals rained down on us, I cried, not tears of fear or confusion, but tears of profound, overwhelming joy. For the first time in my life, standing there in a wedding dress beside my wife, I felt completely and utterly myself. The wedding was the climax, but it was also the beginning. The honeymoon we'd planned for Bali was postponed. Instead, we spent a quiet week in a suite at the hotel, a strange and necessary cocoon where we could begin to process the seismic shift in our lives. There were long talks, tears, and even moments of laughter as we navigated the new terrain of our relationship. Rebecca was my rock, endlessly patient and curious, asking questions not out of judgment, but out of a genuine desire to understand who I was becoming. Returning home was the next major hurdle. News of our unconventional wedding had, of course, preceded us. We were met with a spectrum of reactions from our wider circle of friends and extended family. Some were wonderfully accepting, others were confused but trying, and a few, inevitably, were distant and disapproving. Each reaction was a small cut or a soothing balm on my still raw psyche. The most important step, for me, was seeking professional help. We found a gender therapist, a kind, wise woman named Dr. Evans, in her quiet office, for the first time. I told the whole story from the beginning. She listened without a hint of surprise. "Macy," she said to me in our first session, Using the name naturally. What you're describing is an incredibly rare, accelerated experience of what many transgender people feel over the course of years. The feeling of waking up in the wrong body isn't just a metaphor for you, it was a literal reality. But the feelings of rightness you describe when you present as female, that's the key. This may not be a curse. This may be a very unconventional gift. Her words were a revelation, a gift. It reframed everything. Maybe this wasn't something that happened to me. Maybe this was something that happened for me. Under her guidance, I began to explore what it meant to live as Macy full-time. It started with a visit to a doctor who confirmed what Marcus and I had discovered in that hotel room my body was, for all intents and purposes, biologically female. My hormone levels were that of a cisgender woman. There was no scientific explanation, no medical precedent. It was simply my reality. He recommended starting a low dose of estrogen, not to change my body, but to maintain its new, natural state. The day-to-day process of becoming Macy was a series of small, significant moments. There was the first time I went to work. I was a graphic designer, and my boss, a wonderfully progressive woman, had been briefed. Still, walking into that office, my heart hammered against my ribs. Seeing the familiar faces of my colleagues look at me with new eyes was terrifying, but after the initial awkwardness, things slowly settled into a new normal. They started calling me Macy. They used she/her pronouns. Each time they did, it felt like a little click of a lock falling into place. Life became a process of learning. Rebecca taught me how to do my makeup, her gentle hands guiding mine as I struggled with eyeliner. We'd spend hours in front of her vanity, the countertop a colorful mess of brushes and palettes, laughing as I inevitably smudged my mascara. Marcus remained my steadfast friend. He'd take me out for coffee and talk about sports and video games just like he always had, treating me no differently, which was the greatest gift he could have given me. He helped me learn to walk in heels, a process that involved much wobbling and stumbling around my living room. "Tuck your hips, Macy. It's all in the hips," he'd yell, laughing from the couch. I learned about the subtle things, the way women create space for each other in conversation, the unspoken language of a shared smile with a stranger in a grocery store line, the way clothes feel and move on a body that flows instead of angles. Every day was a discovery. I bought my first purse, a practical leather crossbody bag, and marveled at the sheer utility of it. I found a perfume that felt like me, something with sandalwood and a hint of vanilla. Of course, it wasn't all easy. There were moments of profound dysphoria. But in reverse, I'd see old pictures of myself as Alex and feel a strange disconnect, as if looking at a beloved brother who had passed away. I grieved for him, for the simple, easy life he'd had, but the grief was always overshadowed by the quiet, growing sense of peace that came with living as Macy. One evening, about 6 months after the wedding, I was getting ready for bed. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, wiping off my lipstick. Rebecca came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist and resting her chin on my shoulder, just as she had in the dress shop. We looked at our reflections together. The woman staring back at me was no longer a stranger. Her eyes were calm, her expression serene. The lines of fear and confusion that had been etched on her face in Las Vegas were gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. I saw me, just me. "I get it now," I said softly, meeting my own gaze in the mirror. "Get what?" Rebecca asked. "What happened in Vegas? I used to think I was transformed, but that's not right." I turned in her arms to face her, placing my hand on my heart. I wasn't transformed. I was awakened. 1 year, 365 days since I woke up in that hotel room, a stranger to myself. It felt like both a lifetime and the blink of an eye. The journey had been a whirlwind of discovery, of learning and unlearning, of grieving a past self and joyfully embracing a new one. To celebrate our first anniversary, Rebecca and I decided to go back to Las Vegas. It wasn't about confronting a trauma, it was about reclaiming a place. The city that had been the backdrop for my greatest terror was also the city where I was, quite literally, reborn, where Rebecca had shown me the meaning of unconditional love. We checked into the same hotel, though this time we were in a beautiful suite with a balcony overlooking the glittering strip. There was no trace of the fear that had once consumed me in these halls. Now, Walking through the casino, my hand in Rebecca's, I felt nothing but a serene sense of belonging. I wore a simple, elegant black dress, and the click of my heels on the marble floor was a sound of confidence, not panic. On the evening of our anniversary, Rebecca had a surprise for me. Laid out on the bed was a dress bag. "What's this?" I asked, my heart starting to beat a little faster. "Open it," she said, her eyes sparkling. I unzipped the bag, and my breath caught in my throat. Inside was a wedding dress. It was nothing like the one I had worn out of necessity a year ago. This one was softer, more ethereal. It was made of a flowing, off-white crepe that draped beautifully, with a delicate, hand-beaded overlay on the bodice that shimmered like captured starlight. It was a dress chosen not in a rush of panic and adrenaline, but with thought, with love, with intention. It was a dress that felt like Macy. "We never got to have our own proper wedding photos," Rebecca said softly. "Just the chaotic ones from the ceremony. I thought, maybe we could take some now, just for us." An hour later, we were standing on our balcony as the sun began to set, painting the desert sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. I was in my new dress, Rebecca in a stunning silver gown that complemented mine perfectly. Marcus had flown in for the occasion, acting as our amateur photographer and official witness to our quiet vow renewal. He snapped a few pictures, then lowered the camera, a genuine happy smile on his face. "You've come a long way from that panicked girl in the red cocktail dress, Macy." I smiled back, a real unburdened smile that reached my eyes. "No," I said, the truth of the words settling deep in my soul. "I've just started." He gave me a hug, then discreetly retreated back into the suite, leaving Rebecca and me alone on the balcony. The city lights began to flicker on below us, a river of diamonds in the encroaching twilight. Rebecca stepped closer, her expression full of a love so profound it still sometimes took my breath away. She reached out and placed her hand flat against my chest, right over my heart. I could feel its strong, steady beat beneath her palm. "You know," she whispered, her voice a gentle caress against the cool evening air. "I've thought about it so much this past year. What happened, why it happened, and I think I finally understand." I looked at her, waiting. "You were always her," she said, her eyes locking with mine. "You were always Macy. All that happened in this city was that the universe got tired of waiting for you to figure it out on your own. It just gave you a push." She smiled, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "And now the rest of the world finally gets to see the incredible woman I've loved all along." I leaned in and kissed her, a kiss that was both a thank you and a promise to keep living this authentic life, to honor the miracle that had brought me here. When we pulled apart, I turned to look out at the horizon. The last sliver of sun dipped below the distant mountains, and the Vegas Strip ignited in its full, unapologetic glory. The neon lights washed over my face, and for a moment, I saw my reflection in the balcony's glass door. I saw a woman. Her hair was touched by the breeze. Her eyes were bright with unshed, happy tears, and her smile was one of pure, unadulterated peace. She was no longer a question, no longer a mystery. She was just me, and I was finally, truly, gloriously free.